Hi ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to talk about covering one more time. It seems that covering is the most enigmatic way of sound production, and it has so many ways and so many controversies that I will try to explain to you what is covering, who is not covering, should you always cover. Why do we have a worldwide disagreement about so-called covering, sound technique? Well, if you ask any great opera singer about it, he will talk about his experience and his technique. And what's the most important, unless he's a vocal scientist, an intellectual, he may explain his own technique using his teacher's notions and tricks. I repeat, he will use his teacher's explanation, not necessarily his own ideas. Warning: when you hear a singer describing vocal technique, he describes his own one. And even describing his own one, he may not know necessarily all true mechanism of his own voice. This is not an arrogant statement. This is the fact of the matter. Let's take a famous demonstration of a noble sound by Pavarotti here on YouTube. You can check it out. Click on this link. Pavarotti shows covered sound and not covered sound on F sharp. If you notice, he asked the pianist to give him F sharp. That in a way proves that Pavarotti's legend of being with a perfect pitch is not true. Pavarotti starts with a supported chest voice and turns it, covers it on F sharp passaggio, as he shows not covered sound as not noble one. So he shows something. Yeah, 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 yeah. Not noble. And then he turns it into Of course, that F sharp, the second F sharp, is much more beautiful to my point, and I think it's much more appropriate than the other one that he showed. We have to notice that Pavarotti uses a typical Italian lyric tenor trick, covering a passaggio zone. Does he have a choice if he uses just supported chest voice and not chiaroscuro in this case, to bring it beautifully to F sharp the way he showed it? Of course not. Only chiaroscuro voice is capable of doing it beautifully without covering. Why? Because chiaroscuro doesn't need any modification, just support. Chiaroscuro itself has all the components of the voice in it. Let's say that Pavarotti's type of voices, lyric Italian tenors, do the same, not necessarily in Mozart or bel canto styles, when they approach passaggio zone. They do the same, and they are absolutely correct. I say it again. When you don't use chiaroscuro tone as an only register, and still want to sing with a supported sound, you have to turn your breaking into falsetto or head voice by covering it, otherwise it will break. You have no choice if you want to be heard and be beautiful. That means that voices like Pavarotti have chiaroscuro only after they cover. So Pavarotti's voice is not a full chiaroscuro voice, or any lyric Italian voices are not necessarily full chiaroscuro voices, but that depends on the individual also. Great singer and teacher Lauri Volpi said that instead of covering, he suggests not to open. Inventor of chiaroscuro technique Tenor Dupré suggests not to change, but to keep the chest voice up to the top notes, the same logics. Beniamino Gili suggests not to cover, but support it. Even Beniamino Gili, as I mentioned, lyric tenors, not all Italian lyric tenors are covering. Those who know how to support don't necessarily cover. So whether you cover or not will depend on your technique, volume of your voice, your Fach, Subfach, and so on. In this case, formula like this was like in Russian proverb: what is good for Russian is bad for German. What is good for a lyric tenor is bad for dramatic one. And we can go on. Lyric Italian voices have their chiaroscuro starting at the passaggio zone when they cover their tones. They don't have their chest voices as chiaroscuro, and that's why they need covering. And covering, as Pavarotti showed, is necessary in this case. Rule of chiaroscuro appoggio is not to change, but to keep already covered sound. Let me remind you what covering is. Covering is a manipulation with the sound timbre and larynx position in order to keep sound unforced and supported. Often requires a vowel change from, let's say, A to O or U. U sound, for example, or E sounds, they boost squillo or chiaroscuro in this case. I can show you the different approach of Nessun Dorma sung by Italian lyric tenor and Italian full lyric tenor or dramatic tenor. What usually tenors do in this case, if they're lyric tenors, and even some dramatic tenors unfortunately who don't have good chest voice, what they do here is that Nessun Dorma, could be chiaroscuro, this particular voice, and then I go Nessun Dorma. It's not chiaroscuro, it is supported chest falsetto. Again, chiaroscuro, Nessun Dorma, Nessun Dorma. It's not chiaroscuro. Supported chest falsetto. And this is a difference between a really full lyric tenor or dramatic tenor who uses appoggio. Let's say a dramatic tenor or really true full lyric tenor will sing it this way. Nessun dorma, nessun dorma. Chiaroscuro. If you want to know what falsetto is a breathy voice. It's another synonym. It's a breathy voice. It means that, again, vocal cords are not closing up together, not closing up totally. That's why you waste a lot of air. The air turns into a sound, but not altogether. There's a little or a big hiss, depending on how open your vocal cords are in this case. This is trying to do it with falsetto chest voice. This voice doesn't have squillo, it doesn't have projective force. And it's a lot of extra. That's it, I don't have another air supply for another phrase if I'm singing with falsetto. This is also a good notion for you if you feel that you don't have long phrases, you cannot sing long phrases. One of the reasons tells that you do not have the full closure of vocal cords and you're singing mostly with falsetto, chest falsetto. Now let me show you full chiaroscuro voice. That means where covering is not needed at all because it's already covered. So you start with the chiaroscuro, not It's not just supported voice. What it means? Supported voice starts when your vocal cords start to close up. So falsetto production is when they're vibrating with a little hole, so they're not touching each other. Okay? So of course, supported voice is when your vocal cords already are closing up. That's called the supported voice. Now in recording you might take it for a chiaroscuro voice because recording lies. But if you hear attentively even the recordings, you can notice the difference. There's kind of a metal sound in the chiaroscuro which just supported sound doesn't have necessarily. Now let me say that chiaroscuro all the way doesn't mean that only dramatic tenors can do chiaroscuro all the way. It can be a lyric tenor also, spinto, with not necessarily big, huge voice, but with the voce squillante. So it's the same technique, it's just the timbre is different. This is a full chiaroscuro way. No need for covering. Why? Because it's already covered. It's simple. Every singer that wants to start teaching, in spite of the fact that may have a great technique or anything, doesn't study history of vocal art. He doesn't study the mistakes of the vocal art that were made before him and understood as mistakes, like in science. Okay? You don't discover the gravity of Newton's physics. Again, you may discover it on your personal level. Oh, you see, well, everything drops. Oh my gosh, I have a new, and you can make a new law based on your own calculations. But science doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, vocal technique works that way perfectly. Singers are not interested in what science of singing already discovered. So they discover this America, rediscover that America. It's good if they rediscover it. But they will never reach the top of understanding. The top level of understanding because they're discovering America. It's good if they're discovering America. Most of the time they just stick to the old ideas. Let's try to do the whole falsetto way. Yeah, 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 yeah. This is falsetto way all together. So it's not fully supported voice. That's why it has a short breath. Now I'm demonstrating supported chest voice and covered voice that turns into chiaroscuro. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you saw that I covered it because my previous notes were chest voice, were not chiaroscuro, as you might think. And that's exactly what Pavarotti shows. He shows supported chest voice turning into chiaroscuro when he covers it on F sharp. Most of the lyric tenors do that way. Not all, but most, like Pavarotti did, for example. Beniamino Gigli still used the old Italian trick, one timbre voice and just support.